John Fund is more of a reporter than a commentator, and he's been willing to at least make the attempt to be objective about Trump. And you can tell that in the headline of his piece at nationalreview.com on Friday, Trump's fatal flaw. Like he's only got one. But it is a significant one, and it is the heart of what's going to keep Donald Trump out of the White House and put Hillary Clinton's fat ass into it. And that is that an ungovernable temperament simply cannot govern because it will never get the chance to make the attempt. Donald Trump confused people last Wednesday when he segued from a sedate visit with Mexico's president on the humanitarian crisis of immigration to a raucous rally in Phoenix where he delivered an uncompromising speech on restricting even legal immigration. In one day, Trump appeared to be both appealing to moderate suburbanites concerned about his tone and dishing out red meat to his base. Because that's just what Donald Trump does. Which is the real Donald Trump? Yes. The answer, well, if you don't like that answer, then consider this. It's the wrong question. Trump is a gifted builder of his brand in part because he operates on instinct. In other words, he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And his natural instinct is to be a shapeshifter who gives the audience in front of him what it wants. He not only doesn't sweat the details of policy, he sometimes won't even give them a glance. A first glance. Consider this anecdote from Time magazine's David Von Driel, who spent hours on Trump's campaign plane last February during the primaries. Quote, Trump eyes his beautifully burled and varnished desk heaped with paper, documents, clippings, photographs, who knows. An even larger mountain of paper is on the seat next to his. Trump plucks a sheet as if at random, briefly examines it, then tosses it back on the pile. I come from these rallies and get in here and they want me to look at documents. I can't do it, he says. How do you go from talking to thousands of people, all the love in those rallies, and then quietly sit here and look at documents? Which touches on his narcissistic personality disorder and overall sociopathy. Even as he climbs back to within hailing distance in the polls against Hillary Clinton, which he really hasn't done per se, I mean, he's going to oscillate from mid-single digits to high single digits behind Mrs. Clinton. He's never going to catch her, short of her keeling over at one of the debates. But Trump seems just unable to move an extra few inches to reassure nervous voters, or rather assure them, since any sane voter was not assured in the first place. Of course, that same voter could not be assured now after all that's happened over the past year. But he asked when pollster Peter Hart held a focus group in Wisconsin last week, he asked participants who they thought would ultimately win the race. As observer Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report noted, all but one picked Hillary Clinton. Why? Well, they think that Trump cannot change and will not change. These voters are paying attention, Trumplicans. They want to see a more professional and even-tempered Trump. In other words, they don't want to see Trump. Two even specifically pointed to the debates as important markers. Oh, they will be. Yet even if Trump were to suddenly become more presidential and perform in a professional way during the debates, something of which he is not capable, these voters aren't convinced that it will stick. Very astute voters, Trumplicans. Pity you couldn't follow their example, like back in the spring before you stuck him as the GOP nominee and guaranteed Hillary's election. They are grudgingly accepting a Clinton candidacy, but not enthusiastically embracing it. Because why would anybody embrace that candidacy? That's why never Trump. That's why none of the above. Yes, it is possible. Sticking to your principles, put aside tribalism, and realize neither candidate is acceptable. Both candidates are the enemy. And one of them is going to win. So why leave our fingerprints on such a thing? Either way. When Donald Trump loses in November, it will be because he simply lacks the self-discipline to reach voters beyond his base, i.e., 10% of the population. As one former business associate of his put it, and this nails it, Trump supporters. I wish you would open your eyes and consider this. This is somebody who actually knows Trump. Trump is a spoiled, petulant, insecure 13-year-old who will not change because he thinks that would show weakness. And the worst part is, you think the same way. Comparing Trump to a teenager may sound harsh, but all the evidence to back up that description is there. Back in February, Time magazine's Von Driel caught Trump watching a TV report on the petty insults that flowed between Marco Rubio and Trump. Von Driel asked Trump what he told Barron, his 9-year-old son, about this schoolyard taunting. Parenthetically, I do not envy that young man. First of all, your father is 70 years old. You don't have a father, you have a grandfather that skipped it, that there should be a generation in between the two, which wouldn't necessarily help Barron Trump either. But by the way, I don't suppose his middle name is Von, is it? Barron Von Trump. See why I don't envy this young man, his parentage. But anyway, Von Driel asked Trump what he told Barron, his 9-year-old son, about this schoolyard taunting. It's just part of the deal, he says with a shrug. But do you teach him to do that in his life? I ask. What if he comes to you and says someone at school called him a name? Trump shrugged again. I didn't start it. Yes, that's right. Barron Von Trump has a 70-year-old classmate for all intents and purposes. Or put still another way, Barron Von Trump is more mature than the man who ought to be his grandfather. I think I might take Barron Von Trump over Donald Trump as GOP nominee. Hey, Trump supporters, you'd still get somebody with the surname Trump, and we'd get a more mature candidate. In other words, in Trump's law of the jungle mentality, there is no higher standard of behavior to aspire to. He acts like a self-indulgent high school student with no adult chaperone who can take away his Twitter keys. Even his friend and former political strategist Roger Stone complained to Politico last year that Trump, quote, has these yes men around him and now he's living in a parallel world. And it's not just in the palace guard either. All his cultists are also grotesque enablers. And you people talk about, we don't care about the country? Son of a bitch. People, you need psychological counseling at the very least. Even with the recent arrival of a new, more level-headed campaign team, and that's really grading on the curve, he also doesn't yet appear to have people who can really level with him, or who dare to level with him. Someone who was once closely involved with Trump's best-selling books told John Fund that his longtime secretary once confessed that she couldn't possibly bring him a piece of bad news. I've kept my job this long by knowing I must never bring him bad news, she reportedly said. How'd you like to work for this asshole? I certainly don't want him as my president, I'll tell you that much. Or Hillary. That's why I'm not voting for either one. Of course, the problem is that we are now only 2 months away from Election Day. Trump's refusal to make any concessions makes it much more likely he will lose. Well, his loss was guaranteed, baked into the cake, as it were. That's the reason for his running, was to guarantee Hillary Clinton's election. And the bad news is not something he can avoid confronting. It will be loudly delivered by millions of Americans who will have decided they wanted someone with the emotional skill set that Trump seems incapable of demonstrating he has. And there's a really good reason for that. It's because he doesn't have that emotional skill set. Remember, Trump supporters, the polling question in which Hillary Clinton absolutely destroys Donald Trump has presidential temperament, is an adult. That's why people are more afraid of Donald Trump than they are of Hillary Clinton. And yet that's the same thing that is putting Hillary Clinton in the White House, which I would have thought you, Trump supporters of all people, would have been most afraid of all. Guess I was wrong.